But hey, it's good to be here, and thanks for the introduction. Kind of wish my wife could have came. We have 12 kids at home, so she had to get them up and ready on the bus and off to school. Yeah, I'm just kidding. We only have 3 kids. It feels like 12. I don't know. We got any parents out there? Is anyone a parent? That would be a lot. But hey, sometimes 3 kids feels like 12. So she's home getting them off to school, and she actually does a really good job of keeping me down and grounded and focused on the right stuff. Because I get to travel around the country and share our story and give talks to different audiences. And she was with me at a talk once, and it was kind of a big audience, big stage, dressed up, suit and tie. She was in a dress, and I was sitting next to her, getting almost ready to be introduced. And I was trying to build up my energy because I still get kind of nervous before these things. You guys are a little intimidating, all right? So I'm trying to build up my energy. I look over to her and I say, "Hey, Rach," because her full name's Rachel, which is way too long, right? I'm like, "Hey, Rach, in your wildest dreams, would you ever have guessed that I'm about to get up on this stage and share our life with this audience?" And I'm starting to feel the energy, and I'm ready to go. And she leans over and she says, "Babe, I'm sorry to break this to you right now, but you're not actually in any of my wildest dreams." so I was like, "Oh, great, all right. Well, let's go." All the nerves were gone. I was like, went up and shared our story. But that's what I'm going to do with you today. For the next, I have 3 hours, right? No? All right, it won't be quite 3 hours. But I'm going to share our story. And our story is unique to us. Everyone here, you have your own unique story, right? Everyone has their own unique stories, still writing it. But I believe that there are definitely similar strands that run throughout. And as I talk, I'm going to talk about embracing challenge. I'm going to talk a little bit about resilience. And I just hope there's something that you can walk away with that you can use in your life. So as I talk about myself a little bit and my story, I don't want you to focus on me and what's going on in my life. I want you to think about you and yourself and where you need resilience and some of the challenges that you're facing, professional challenges, personal challenges, and I want you to focus on that. So we're going to jump into it. I'm going to start my story in Hawaii, which is is a good place to be. So I don't know, has anyone been to Hawaii before? Yeah. Pretty good place. If you haven't been there, a lot like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, minus, I don't know. They have an ocean. We have a couple rivers, so it's a little bit like that. But you can picture us there. Let's go there, all right? You can close your eyes if you want, but you got the palm trees and the sun being down on your face and the beach. You could smell the ocean air. All right, that's all we're getting right now, okay? But we're in Hawaii, and I'm actually 132 miles into a race. And this race is the Ironman Triathlon, Ironman World Championships. You guys familiar with the Ironman at all? Have you ever heard of that? If not, I describe it as a long day, right? Because that's kind of just what it is. It's a long day. And everyone can relate to that. Everyone's had a long day. But you start that day with a 2.4-mile swim, and then you hop on a bike and ride 112 miles. And then you finish by running a marathon, 26.2 miles. So it's 140.6 miles total. And I was 132 miles into it when I'm starting this story. I'm already done with the swim. Do we have any swimmers out there? Anyone? Got one? All right, one person can swim? All right, I expected more. That's all right, though. But I was Michael Phelps ripping through the Pacific Ocean. I was. In my head until the next day I saw a video. I was like, that's not Michael Phelps. That's like a giraffe in a bathtub. But I'm done, finished with that swim. I'm done with that bike ride. Long time to be on a bike, but I'm done with it. And now I'm 18 miles into the marathon. Has anyone run a marathon before? There we go in the back. Oh, a couple runners in here. How about a half marathon? Yeah, all right. I like how the same hands go up. They're like, yeah, I did a half twice. That's cool. Yeah. How about a 5K? Is anyone like a 5K? Maybe a turkey trot on Thanksgiving? That's always fun, a couple 5K. How about, has anyone went outside of their house and walked around their block once? There we go. A couple more hands go up. So a lot of you can relate to where I was, physically and mentally 132 miles into this race. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. We're getting there. I just don't think I'm in the right tunnel because I can't see that light. I was in physical pain. My body hurt. That side cramp that you get sometimes when you're running or walking to your mailbox? Yeah, I had that side stitch. I had it everywhere, though. Every major muscle group was seizing up. It was painful. My hips hurt. My feet hurt. Well, my left foot hurt. My right foot did not hurt because I don't really have a right foot. So I'm a right below the knee amputee. I have about 5 inches of limb below my knee, and I don't have to worry about getting blisters on my right foot, which is a win. And you got to take the wins when you can get them, right? So that's a win right there. But although I don't have to worry about blisters on my foot, I do have to worry about some skin breakdown and blisters on my limb, my nub. I've named him. His name is Jason, but I won't call my nub Jason today, in case there's a Jason out there. That always gets awkward for them. But my nub, I was feeling some issues. I was feeling some issues with it, and I'm starting to question, like, should I stop and fix this? And that would be me having to stop, sit down, take my leg off, take my liner off, try to find something dry enough to get the sweat off, and try to reseat everything, get everything back on, stand back up. And I didn't want to do that. But then I actually did not have to make that decision whether I was going to stop or not, because my body ended up making that decision for me. Not only does your body hurt when you run a race, it takes an entire day, but what you have to do throughout that day, the most important thing that you have to do throughout that day is not the swim or the bike or the run. It's fueling your body, your nutrition plan. And do we have any detailed planners out there? Do you know like what you're doing each minute of the day? I kind of wish I was like that. I'm not a detailed planner, but I knew how important this nutrition plan was. I had a coach, I had some mentors, and they said, we need to dial this in. And I'll tell you, I really did. I think I had the perfect plan. It was the perfect plan. I knew how many calories I wanted for breakfast. I had to take in 350 calories per hour on the bike while I was cycling, and I knew what worked with my stomach and what didn't. I knew how much fluid my body needed to go throughout that day per hour based on my sweat rate and the humid environment in Hawaii. So we had this thing down to a T, perfect plan, but it was Mike Tyson that said everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And I don't know, I guess that's what running an Ironman feels like. And I deviated from that plan a couple times, and now 18 miles into the marathon, that's where I started to pay for it. And I remember I'm running, I'm doing my thing, and all of a sudden I start to feel weak. I started to feel the shakes. My run slows to a jog. All right, my jog slows to a walk. My walk slows to a stagger, and within like 5 minutes from when I started feeling weak, I was done. My body gave up. My body gave up, and I sat down on the side of the road. I had 8 miles and some change left. Finish this Ironman World Championships. You know, it was more than a race to me. You know, at that point in time, you know, it's a race, it's an event, but it was more than just an event. This was personal. This was me proving to myself something, and now I'm on the side of the road. You know, I'd worked for months to get to this race, to get to this event. You know, and in a lot of early mornings, every morning up before the sun, getting that first workout in, sometimes multiple workouts. I didn't want to be on the ground, but I did what any great triathlete would do. I took my leg off. Maybe not every great triathlete could do that, but I could. I took my leg off, and it felt so good. It felt so good, just the relief. It's like walking around in high heels on a tired day, right? And you kick your heels off at the end of the day, and that relief you feel in your feet. I've never done that. I'm just saying it's probably similar to that. Someone told me it was like that once, but it felt so good. And then I did the next best thing that I could have done at that point in time in my life. I ate a peanut butter and jelly Uncrustable sandwich. Have you ever had one of those things? Yeah. I've always loved peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and when I was little, I had to ask my mom to cut the crust off. Yeah, right. She would never do that. She would never. That's why I'm so tough, because I ate crust as a kid. I think that's important. Make your kids eat crust. But I had one of those sandwiches. It was like an emergency thing. It was smashed in one of my pockets, and I pulled it out, and I started munching on it. And truth is, even though I love peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, I wasn't hungry. My stomach was upset, but although my body was giving up, I'm still going through the motions as if I'm going to finish this race. And those things have 210 calories in them, and I knew I needed to get some calories in me, so I'm munching on my sandwich, hanging out with my nub and my prosthetic leg, and I have one of those blade legs. I don't know if you've ever seen those. They're pretty cool, though. So we're kind of just hanging out together, and I start to enjoy Hawaii. I'm like, yeah, I could smell the ocean. Yeah, that sun actually feels pretty good right now. This is pretty, I like this. I'm comfortable. And I realize, like, I'm really comfortable. I'm extremely comfortable right now. If I don't get up right now, it's probably not going to happen. I don't know, have you ever had one of those days where you go home and like you plop down on the couch and you're like, well, I guess I'm sleeping here tonight because I can't get back up. I've had those days, but that's where I was. It's like, if I don't get up right now and start moving to that finish line, this day is over and I'm not going to finish this race. And I didn't go all the way to Hawaii to do 132 miles of a 140.6 mile race. So I'm like, let's go, let's do this. I grabbed my liner, which goes underneath my prosthetic leg, and I put it on. And I grab my prosthetic leg and I go to put it on. and it doesn't fit. And I'm a little bit confused at first. I pick it up and look at it like maybe I grabbed someone else's leg, right? I'm like, nah, this is definitely mine. I looked down at my limb and it was swollen. Just all the fluid that I had taken in, like with my heart rate that high, just went straight to my limb, and now I can't get this leg on. And it made sense, I was still a relatively new amputee, and that happens with the swelling, but I just remember this point. I was defeated. I hung my head. Oh, man. I asked myself this question. Eric, how did you get yourself into this? I don't know if you've ever asked yourself that question before. I don't know if you asked yourself that question today. I hope not. But how did I get myself into this? I wanted to quit. Every part of me wanted to quit. And this was my first attempt at finishing the Ironman triathlon. This is my first attempt at finishing it. And I'm gonna finish that story in a second or so. But if we take a step out and look at it, there's some negative things piling up, right? I'm in physical pain. My body hurts. I can't get my leg on. That's never a good day. I got voices in my head talking to me, telling me to quit. I have all these negative things piling up. But if you go back to this day, this point in time in my life, there were a lot of positive things. I was alive. I was in Hawaii. That's a cool place to be. My family was out there to support me. My wife, 11 kids. Nah, I'm just kidding. Now my life, and actually my two daughters were out there. My son hadn't arrived yet. He wasn't there yet. But they were there, and they're encouraging me, popping up at different points in the course. It was pretty cool. I had people tracking my progress from all over the country. It was crazy. It was overwhelming. They were reaching out to me throughout that week, encouraging me. It was a really cool experience. And for me, the big one, I was competing in a sport. Something that I've always loved to do, something that at one point in my life, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do it again, and we were doing it. And we were doing it on the big stage at the Ironman World Championships, Kona, Hawaii. It was so cool. It was just really hard for me to see the positive things. It was hard for me to see the positive things because they were being disguised by the negative things, right? The negative things that have piled up, that's where my focus was. And I was in the midst of a challenge. And that's where everyone in this room comes into my story, right? I don't think everyone's going to go out and sign up for an Ironman after my talk. Maybe just half of you, probably half of you, yeah. But I do know as you go back into your worlds, as you travel home today and whatever's going on this week, you're going to face challenge, right? Yeah. And sometimes it happens to you. Sometimes you go out and seek it, right? It could be professional, could be from stress at work, what's going on, could be personal, could be financial, could be relationships, loss, addiction. We face challenge each and every day, and I think what really, really defines us is not the situation or circumstance that we're in, but it's how we step up to the plate and how we handle challenge. If we do get knocked down, because that happens, it's how we get back up and keep pushing forward. Or when things are going well, it's how we look around and we pull others up with us, and really, it's character. And everyone here has character. Everyone has character. But I don't know, is a good character or a bad character? You don't just wake up one morning, though, and flip a switch, and all of a sudden, you go, okay, I have great character. Character is something that we develop. And we develop it through the little things that we do day in and day out, the little habits and behaviors. And I just, sometimes I ask myself some questions, like, some of the things that are important to me. Think of some of the things that are important to you. Some of the things that are important to me are integrity. Do people around me trust me? Or have I messed that up at some point? Yeah. Work ethic. When I'm given a task, a job, a mission, am I that person that pours everything into it? Or do I do just enough to get by? Do I care about the people around me? Or am I always thinking, what's in it for me? And do I have grit? Do I have resilience? This is the one I hope my kids grow up with, right? When things get hard, am I quick to walk away, or am I ready to dig in and push through? Because in everything that we do, we have people that are just naturally talented, and you have people that just don't quit. And I tell you what, that person that just doesn't quit, that's the one I want on my team. Because when it comes to talent's great. But if that talented person walks away as soon as something gets hard, that person that just doesn't quit, they're eventually going to be successful. So that's why I'm going to talk about resilience today. I'm going to share principles of resilience that I've learned. Because I've had some people throughout my life who have helped me recognize some of these principles and helped me navigate through challenge. All right, I want to get back to that Ironman triathlon race. But first, quick background to who I am. Now we'll go to this picture. All right, you never seen this before. This is like not a Halloween picture. This is a mid-'80s, all right? This is mid-'80s, and I'm the good-looking guy in the front row with the bowl cut. And I'm going to start rocking that haircut again next year, I think. I wish I could. I look at this picture, I'm grateful. I am grateful. At that time, I didn't know. Growing up, I wasn't grateful. Through school, through college, as a young adult, no. But now I look at this and I just recognize what my parents gave me, and it doesn't happen. Not everyone has this foundation, but what my parents valued mattered. They didn't value stuff. They valued love, support, character, family. And I hope that I can build a foundation in my kids and my family that my parents built for myself and my 2 older sisters. I am a youngest sibling. Do we have any youngest siblings out there? Yeah, we're the toughest. Yeah, my sisters it made me tough growing up because they used to beat me up a little bit. I could take them now. I'm just kidding. They could still take me. But my dad loves sports. My dad, hardworking dude, hardworking guy, blue collar guy. He'd go off to work and he'd come home and we couldn't hug him because he had ink all over him, bad back, stitches somewhere. He'd go take a shower, and I'll tell you what I learned from him is he never once complained about his job. And I didn't realize it was a thing until I got old and I realized everyone complains about their job at some point. Not for him. It was honestly, that was an opportunity in a way and a privilege to provide for his family. So it was like a very good example for myself and my sisters. Love sports, and because he loves sports, we were a sports family, and this is me in the 6th grade going out for football. I see some smiles out there. This is supposed to be an intimidating picture, all right? I don't know why we took it in front of pink flowers. And you're not supposed to smile in football pictures. I didn't know that till the 7th grade. I couldn't find that picture, so we're stuck with this. But because I love sports, I had to appreciate school because that was my mom's role, right? She didn't know much about sports, but she knew how to use them. And she used them so we can get good grades. I wasn't allowed to play on the sports teams unless I got good grades. And baseball, football, baseball and football were my 2 big ones growing up, and I wanted to play on those teams, so I did well in school. And it was the 8th grade that I had to do a homework assignment and it ended up having a very big impact on me and on my life. It was a career research report. What do you want to be when you grow up? And think about who was your 8th grade English teacher. Mine was Mrs. Christ, and it was a cool project, cool report, but we weren't allowed to do it on being a professional athlete, which was totally unfair because that was my first 9 choices, and I'm like, okay, went home, I asked my parents and my dad, he said, you should check out the military. I'm like, okay, military. And if you go, you got the military, Army, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard, Air Force. If you go back to the mid-'90s, when I was making this huge life decision, out of all those branches of service, by far, you can't dispute this. The Marine Corps had the best commercials on television. The few, the proud, the Marines. That guy scaling a mountain with massive muscles, and he got to the top, and he slayed a dragon. I was like, wow, that's cool. And then he put on his dress blues. I was like, that's what I want to do when I grow up. So I did my report on the Marine Corps, and instantly, I respected what the Marines represent, and the rich history, and the stories of valor and heroes, and really it was a military in general. And at that time, I looked up to our sports heroes, and that's when things changed for me, and I started to look up to our military veterans. My dad, he was in the Navy. My grandpap served in Korea in the Army. The guy down the road was a World War II veteran. I looked up to the men and women who served our country, and those were the men and women I wanted to emulate. Do we have military veterans with us here today? Or anyone who has military? And thank you for your service. Thank you. And how about military in your family? Yeah, that's awesome. So many hands just went up. I love it. So the branch, I wanted to be a Marine. The route that I took, I actually went to the United States Naval Academy. You guys familiar with Navy? How about West Point? You familiar with West Point? We're like West Point, but way better, all right? I went there. I played rugby there. Rugby, great sport. If you ever watched rugby and you're like, I have no idea what's going on. I played for 3 years. I was like, I have no idea what's going on. Sometimes I tackle someone, they're like, McElvenny, great job. Sometimes you tackle someone, they're like, McElvenny, you're not allowed to do that. I'm like, okay, all right, just tell me what I can do. I studied mechanical engineering, and this decision ended up being one of the best decisions that I've ever made in my life. And it's not really because I care at all about mechanical engineering. That's actually how I met my wife. She was also a midshipman at the Naval Academy, also studying mechanical engineering. And I used to, I thought she was cute. My strategy, I'd go to her for my help in my coursework. Not because I cared about my grades anymore, I just thought she was really cute, My strategy paid off. I remember sitting next to her in thermodynamics class, and I was sitting next to her and I was writing her a note in crayon. That's all right though. It's like, do you like me more than a friend? Circle, yes or no? Nah, that didn't really happen. But my strategy paid off. We graduated 2006. A lot happened really quickly. A lot happened. She was commissioned an officer in the United States Navy. I was commissioned an officer in the United States Marine Corps. We started our family. We got married, had our first daughter, started new careers, moved out to the West Coast, and started deploying. And I'll tell you, the first 5 years were absolute chaos. She's the one on the left, if you're curious at all. The first couple of years, we did 5 overseas deployments. One of us was always gone while the other was raising our daughter. My last deployment was I'm going to talk about. It was a trip to Helmand Province, Afghanistan, and I led a small team, unique job. This was unique to my other deployments. I led a small team of 4 guys, 5 once we got into country because we had an interpreter on the far right, that's Kazim, and we embedded into an Afghan Army infantry company of 120 soldiers with a job to mentor, train, and advise them during combat operations. So we were all out and about doing our thing. Really, really cool experiences. This is just one of the villages we operated in. It was in the Helmand River Valley, Helmand Province. So I thought it was absolutely beautiful. It was like a desert environment with some mountains on the outskirts, and there was some greenery because of the Helmand River, and it was a farming district. Didn't have electricity or running water, but I loved the people. The people were awesome. Hanging out with the kids, a lot of fun. This picture, when I look at this picture, this means a lot to me. This was my corpsman, Mike Schrum, outside of a school. And this school didn't exist the year prior. So, I felt like I was serving a purpose larger than myself operating there. On December 9th, 2011, my life changed. So the day, it started like a normal day, woke up, did some final preparation to go on a patrol. And this patrol was a dismounted patrol, meaning we weren't in vehicles, we were walking around, and it was a new village, a village that looked a lot like that, but it was a new one that we hadn't been in for very long. And what we wanted to do was talk to the people and get them to trust the Afghan soldiers more than the Taliban. And this patrol, we'd be walking around, this patrol ended up being 5 hours. And every time I tell this story, the patrol gets a little bit longer. I'm just kidding, I wouldn't do that. But we're finishing up this 6-hour patrol and we're heading back to our patrol base. And our patrol base is where we get to take off our gear and debrief the mission and start planning for the next day and the next mission. And as we're heading there, about 1,000 meters left of open ground, leaving a village, I stepped on an IED. I stepped on an improvised explosive device and I triggered an explosion underneath my right foot. Now, I remember the experience vividly. I was conscious throughout, but I was dazed at first. I had a concussion, so I didn't know what had happened. It was just a violent force picked my body up and threw me to the ground onto my back. Instantly, my ears were ringing, just a very, very high-pitched ringing sound. I couldn't hear anything else. I didn't even hear the explosion. I heard a pop, like you're opening a can of Coca-Cola. I heard that pop, ears ringing, and life was just in slow motion. Everything was in slow motion. I felt wetness on my left leg, up pretty high, and not with my hands because I had gloves on. I just felt that sensation. I didn't feel any pain. I didn't feel anything. I could smell chemicals. I remember tasting the dust particles that were like landing on my face and my lips. And slowly things are coming back to me. I open my eye, kind of see a little bit of the brown of the dirt, and I'm like, okay, wait, I'm in Afghanistan. I'm laying on my back. I'm looking into the sky. A second earlier, like beautiful blue sky, not a cloud in it. Now it's just full of smoke and dust. And right around then is where it hit me. It's like, oh my goodness, I stepped on an IED. And I knew it. I knew that I stepped on an IED. That was the weapon that we saw over and over again. And in just the previous 2 days, we had found 13 of them the right way. This one we found, I found it the wrong way. But I remember I realized I stepped on an IED. I knew that I was bleeding, and I knew it was up high on my leg. And I didn't feel anything yet. I still didn't feel pain. And for a moment, I thought that was it. And I actually remember the 2 thoughts that went through my head. The first one, I thought I was going to go to heaven. And it wasn't necessarily a scary thought. I think it was, I don't know if I prepared myself for this, but I think I accepted it. It was like, I get to go to heaven. And I'm a Christian, I think heaven is an amazing place, and I'm just thinking about that, and then I remember picturing my wife and my daughter's face, and when I pictured their face, I got scared. There were still things on this earth that I wanted to do. I wanted to grow old with my wife, raise my daughter. My daughter was 5 at the time. And I'm thinking about them, and I'm scared, and next thing I know, Mike Schrum, my corpsman, so he's our medic, he came running up to me, and he started saving my life. He started saving my life, and the Marines around started to take care of me, because that's what we do, we take care of each other. And it was myself and my corpsman and some Afghan soldiers, but there were 2 Marine groups in the area, and they ran to us. And I'm glad I was conscious throughout. Now I forget, I get past the pain, but what I saw next was just amazing. I don't know if you've ever been in the midst of heroes, but it was just a group of warriors and heroes. Marines came to us, and I was the senior ranking guy. There was initiative and problem solving everywhere. Sergeant Tina Harris just stepped up and took charge, started moving Marines around the battlefield, and you just saw leadership at every level. One group said, hey, follow me, and they went and set a perimeter and wanted to make sure it was secure so they could bring in a helicopter. Another group went to find that place for a helicopter to land, and then they had to clear it to make sure it doesn't land on an IED, and they're working. And another group, they're getting a stretcher ready to carry me, and I have 2 corpsmen working on me, saving my life, and everything is just happening. And was it happening perfect? No, there were things going wrong, because that's life, right? At one point, I heard someone say, "Hey, we can't get headquarters on the radio," and I saw a guy swapping out batteries and pieces with the radio, and so they could. They were just making things happen, decision making, problem solving. Everything is happening, and I'm kind of praying that the helicopter gets there before the Taliban does, and I'm just waiting. And then I heard the worst sound that I could hear at that time: another explosion behind me. I didn't even try to look. I looked into my corpsman's eyes. Mike, he put his head down for a moment, and then he stood up and took off. Another Marine stepped on an IED as they were trying to clear a spot for the helicopter to land. And as my corpsman runs over to him, we're not supposed to do that. You already have 2 IEDs hidden in the ground. It's basically an uncleared minefield. We're supposed to clear a path before we save his life. But my corpsman, at that point in time, that Marine's life was more important to him than his own. And he risks his life to run over to Matthew Miller. And he starts working on him. Another corpsman gets up and runs over with him, does the same thing, risks his life. And as they're working on him, I hear the helicopters. I heard them, and then I saw them. 2 helicopters are inbound. I'm like, oh, thank goodness. They're getting closer and closer, and then we start to get shot at. So this bad day that already got worse is now worse. We start to get shot at, and I don't know who that pilot was. But initially, they called him off. They said, hey, you can't come in right now. I have a hot landing zone. The pilot said, no, I see you. I see the enemy. I'm coming in. Throw smoke. Someone threw a little canister of smoke, green smoke. It billowed green. And the pilot, he came in, risked his life. He came in, landed between myself and Matthew Miller, and it was a controlled chaos. Everything was happening the way it was supposed to, but with the rotor blades spinning and the rocks and the debris everywhere, it was so hard to focus on anything. And they picked me up on a stretcher and run me into the back of the helicopter and put me down. I'm laying next to Matthew, and it buttons up and takes off. It was crazy, fast and furious. It was a 7-minute flight from where we were to the surgical facility. And that's why there's so many amputees and traumatic injuries from the most current conflicts, because we had tourniquets. As soon as I was injured, we stopped the bleeding, and we have surgical facilities on the front line. So 7-minute flight, never forget it. For 2 reasons. One, that's when I found out that I had lost the lower part of my right leg. I didn't know it until then. And then I'm laying there, and I'm laying next to Matthew Miller. He just lost his left leg. Matthew, young guy, this is his first deployment, 19 years old. And in between us is a crew chief, and as we get close to that 7-minute mark, he starts to count down. He's like, all right, guys, we got 30 seconds. Brace yourself. And kind of holding on to the stretcher, and you can feel the helicopter move around a little bit, and he keeps counting down. He's like, 25 seconds. 20 seconds. And at that time, Matthew looks over at me. He says, sir, you first. As in, let them take you off the helicopter first. I can hang on longer. Now, I thought that was amazing. He just lost his left leg. He's in pain. He's struggling himself. Instead of him thinking about himself, he's able to look around and say, what can I do for someone else right now? I can let him off the helicopter. That's character right there. That's character. I use that today when I'm going through my day. Every once in a while, you take a step back and be like, okay, what can I do for someone else today? And when you start looking for opportunities, they present themselves. We landed Before I go any further, Matthew Miller, it's now Staff Sergeant Matthew Miller. He's currently on a deployment. He's still in the Marine Corps. Just awesome guy. We landed, went into surgery. I woke up after surgery, missing my right leg below the knee, bandages all over my left leg, my arm. I'm in bad shape, but I'm alive. And this is what starts the next part of the journey. All right, so that was the bad stuff. This is the good stuff. My life changed that day. My life changed that day. And change is hard. Change is hard. Little change, big change. You know, the whole world went through change not too long ago, and it was challenging. It was hard. It was hard. But who we are, who we are in change, who we are in challenge, as individuals, we are going to impact the people around us. We're going to impact, our circle, our friends, our family, co-workers, customers. We're going to impact the people around us. We don't get to make that decision or that choice. But the choice that we do make, and we get to make it each and every morning, is whether we're going to impact people in a positive way or a negative way. And like I said, I've had people throughout my life who have opened my eyes how to handle challenge, how to handle change, and how to impact people in a positive way. And these are the stories I want to share with you. Because there are things in our lives that we do not control, right? You could think of some of that, and sometimes we focus on it. Like my leg, it's not going to grow back. I tried fertilizer, that didn't work. I got to just accept that fact, and I decide to focus on the things that I can control. And one of the first lessons that I learned, the first principle, and I want to talk about gratitude. And this came from my daughter. My daughter, her name is Lupe. She was 5 years old when I was injured. I don't know, does anyone have a 5-year-old? There we go, all right, yeah. I think everyone should go rent a 5-year-old for a little bit. I don't know if you can still do that or not. But they are great. They tell you what's on their mind. They're amazing. Lupe looked at me like I was Superman prior to that deployment. So I just pretended to be Superman. After my injury, I was not Superman. I did not look like Superman, feel like Superman. I was really scared how she was going to handle this and what this meant. Like being a dad, and I didn't have a leg, and I didn't know if that was the worst of it. If we go back to December 9th, middle of the night, San Diego, where my wife and daughter were, my wife got the phone call. And my wife missed the phone call because she misses every phone call. I don't even know why she has a phone sometimes. I don't know if you know anyone like that. That's my wife. We could call her right now. 100% guarantee she doesn't pick up. That's all right, though. She listened to the voicemail, called him back. It was headquarters of Marine Corps. They told her about me. I said, your husband, Captain Eric McElvenny, he's been injured. He is currently in critical condition. He's going to be going into surgery. He's lost one of his legs, and we're going to get back to you when we get more information. So that was the initial call. It's a hard call to get, but both of us being military, we knew a phone call is way better than someone showing up at your door in uniform. So she rolled with it. She talked to them a couple times throughout the night. Great communication, a lot of information by the morning time. The next morning, it was a Friday morning. She didn't have to go down to her ship. She had taken the day off. She was going to volunteer in kindergarten in Lupe's class. And she ended up not going to volunteer that day, but Lupe still went to school. And before she went to school, my wife told her, she sat her down and said, Lupe, Daddy got hurt at work. Daddy lost one of his legs, and Daddy's going to be coming home. We need to be there to support him. And Lupe, she quickly asked the question, when is Daddy coming home, right? And my wife, she told her, she said he's going to be home in about 6 or 7 days. That was kind of the estimate. And home was being to San Diego in the hospital there. And my wife, she takes about 10 seconds, or my daughter, takes 10 seconds to process all of this information. And then she smiles. And she says, Daddy's going to be home for Christmas. And I thought that was so cool. I thought that was so cool. Well, such a negative event for me and my wife and my parents and my friends. My little 5-year-old daughter just so purely pulled something positive from that situation. You know, I don't know what's better, like having a leg or being home for Christmas. That whole having a leg thing, that was gone. Instead of her focusing on that, like we all were, she decided to focus on something positive, that silver lining. I love it. I was in Germany on my way back when my wife told me about her response, and it made my day. You know, I remember. It was like in between surgeries, I lit up. I'm like, that is awesome. I'm going to be home for Christmas. I called the nurse, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to be back for Christmas. We hadn't spent Christmas together because of all the deployments, and now we got to spend a Christmas together. And I'll tell you, I knew immediately that's the person that I want on my team. That's the person that I want to be, that person that could look at a situation and find something positive in it. And it's a kid's way of thinking, right? When do we lose that? When do we lose that kid's way of thinking? And when you think about it, it's simple. What did Lupe do? That was just her being grateful for what she had. She still had her father, and she was grateful for that. And I realized, wow, I have a lot to be grateful for. I'm grateful to still be alive, still be her father. I'm grateful that I still have my left leg. I didn't used to like my left leg until I lost my right one. Now I love this. Like, legs do some cool stuff, I'll tell you. I'm grateful for the technology and prosthetics, though. You know, I have my running blade leg. I have a different prosthetic leg that I cycle in. I have a leg that I can go in the water in. I have my everyday walking leg. That's the technical term for this one. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that I had the privilege of serving our country as a Marine. That was something I wanted to do for a long time, and I got to do it. And I just, at that time, had to answer the call. I'm grateful to be on the journey I'm on now. I'm grateful to be able to race. I'm grateful to be able to share the story. I'm definitely grateful to be here today. There's a lot to be grateful for. And here's a trick. I'm going to share this trick with you. This is your takeaway. I did not make this up. Someone shared it with me, and I thought it was a brilliant idea. I want you to think of something that you have to do. Think of something you have to do. Like, could be simple. Could be work-related. Could be something at home. I have to feed my dog in the morning. Daisy, black lab. She's 10 years old. She woke up this morning at 4:30. And she has me trained. I got out of bed, and I fed her, let her out. I have to, my wife does a lot of the cooking, so I have to clear the table, get the dishes started, you know. Lupe, 16 years old now, and she just got her license, but I'm still driving around a good bit. I have to take her everywhere, and my two other little kids. They do so many activities, like swimming and softball and band and friends and school. I'm like an unpaid Uber driver, right? So think of something that you have to do. Think of something that you have to do. And then one by one, starting in the back. Can you stand up and share that with me? I'm just kidding. You don't have to. Everyone's like, what? I did not sign up for that. All right, but you got something that you have to do, right? All we do is we're going to change our vocabulary from I have to I get to. All right, I get to feed my dog in the morning, even though it's early and I'm all cranky. Man, Daisy, she brings our family so much love that I get to feed her. I get to clear the table, get the dishes going. That's simple. That means there's food on the table. That's a blessing. That means that we sat down as a family and ate. Grateful for that. Now, I'm grateful. I get to take Lupe around to all her events, right? I'm approaching this time in her life where she's going to start doing that herself, and she's going to graduate high school and go off somewhere. Like, the conversations that we have one-on-one in the car I cherish them. I cherish them. I know I'm going to miss them. So I am not an unpaid Uber driver. Like, that's my reward. My payment is spending that quality time with her, driving around. I get to. So when we can do that, we can change our have tos to get to, and we can be more grateful in our life. We can be more grateful in our life. We can impact people around us in a positive way. I think that's principle number one that a resilient person has, is they have gratitude. All right. I don't have to talk much about perspective, but this is simple. When I was in the hospital feeling sorry for myself, I met some of the other men and women that were injured, and my single below-knee amputation was a paper cut. This is a paper cut compared to what some of the men and women were dealing with, and the wounds and the scars and the double, triple amputees, quad amputees, men and women that wouldn't stand, see, hear again. And then I met some Gold Star parents, Gold Star wives who lost their loved ones, and I realized, like, wow, this is nothing compared to what some people were dealing with, and that's perspective. And not only did I realize this could have been worse, but the men and women at that hospital, there was no quitting them. You know, they were getting after it, going through physical therapy, lifting weights, running on prosthetic blades, sweating, high-fiving. The attitudes, mindsets were just absolutely amazing. I saw two guys. I was in physical therapy. This is week 1 of physical therapy for me, and there were two guys standing on prosthetic legs. Both of them had 2 prosthetic legs. They had shorts on, a workout shirt, and it was like a homemade shirt. It was like a green, so they went with a marine green. But I read the back of the shirt, and it said, "I had a blast in Afghanistan." And I remember reading that shirt, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that's pretty funny. Is it too soon for me to laugh at that? That's great, but that was the mindset. I'll tell you, like, it was a group of warriors. I couldn't wait to join them. And I think that's important to have perspective in different points in time. All right, goals are important. I think a resilient person has goals, sets goals, and sees them through. And after my injury, I didn't have a great goal. My goal was like to get out of pain for the next 10 minutes. And after my last surgery, about 2 weeks after my injury, my commanding officer sent me an email. He was still fighting a war in Afghanistan, Ike Moore. Called him the Alaskan assassin behind his back. We never call it to his face because I didn't want to mess with it. I think he wrestled bears when he grew up. But great, absolute leader. Sent me an email. I opened it up in the hospital bed on an iPad. I read it. It says, Eric, let me know when you're going to run your first marathon. And that was it. That was the email. And I remember reading this email and thinking to myself, wow, what a jerk, right? Why would he say that? I just maybe he didn't hear about the explosion. Yeah. But really, like, I knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. Now, instead of me focusing on what it is I can't do anymore, let's set a goal and start working towards it. That's what I need. I need a challenge. And he challenged me at running a marathon. So that's when I decided I had to one-up it, and I decided I'm going to set a goal to run an Ironman triathlon. I'm going to finish an Ironman. Now, I didn't know exactly what I was getting myself into, but that was my goal. I didn't know when it was going to happen, how it was going to happen, but that was the start, setting that goal. It inspired me. Having that goal inspired me. Do you have a goal right now? Professional goal, personal goal? Do you have a goal right now that inspires you? Because when you do, I'll tell you, that was the reason for me to get out of bed in the morning, go to all my appointments. I go to physical therapy, ask for double sessions. Like, you couldn't hold me back at that point. I wanted to keep going because I had a goal that inspired me. Did anyone wake up this morning and read their goal? No, it's write it down. I think the two things you could do when you set a goal. First thing is write it down and put it somewhere where you can read it every morning, because then it's real. And the next thing you can do is tell two people. Tell two people about it. Especially two people that are going to hold you accountable, because then it's legit, and you got to do it. You got to see it through. So I think goals are extremely important, and a resilient person sets goals. All right. A resilient person has consistency and discipline. After my injury, after I started moving in that right direction, I got signed up for my first triathlon. Well, this is walking. This is not a triathlon. But I was up and walking 2 months after my injury, and then 8 months after my injury, I did my first triathlon, a sprint triathlon. A sprint triathlon, small fraction of what an Ironman is. It's like an hour-long race instead of like a 17-hour race. But I will never forget this day. I woke up, put on my triathlon kit, and I was like, I'm going to go do it. I walked out into the living room. My wife saw me. Her eyes got real big. I was like, that must look good. She must be checking me out, right? Yeah, and then she kind of started chuckling a little bit, and I'm like, Rach, what's so funny? And she's like, I'm sorry, I've just never seen you in spandex before. I was like, oh, great. Now I'm self-conscious. Does it make my butt look big? And she's like, yeah, a little bit. We'll work on that later. Go do that race. And I went and I did this race, and I did two others. I did two other races that year, and a marathon. So in that first year, I did 3 triathlons and a marathon. They were each milestones to get to that bigger goal of running an Ironman. And then next thing I know, I got a call after that marathon by an organization. It was built with chocolate milk. Built with chocolate milk. You know the Got Milk campaign? Well, this is like the Got Chocolate Milk campaign, and they're marketing chocolate milk as a recovery drink for athletes, because chocolate milk has all the necessary nutrients, minerals, and proteins that your body needs to recover after a challenging workout. I'm sorry, I was under contract to say that for a year, so it kind of rolls off the tongue a little bit. But they called me up and they said, Eric, we are putting together a team to go compete at the Ironman World Championships. Do you want to be part of it? I was like, yes. They said, we saw what you did last year, and we think we want someone who can actually finish this race, and we think you can do it. And I'm like, okay, let's do this. I'm in. And then their second question, which I really think they should have let off with, was, Eric, are you lactose intolerant by any chance? I was like, nope. And even if I was, I wouldn't tell you. I got it out. I don't know. I really wanted to do that race, and I was on track to do it. Very cool experience for me. I don't know if we got any other Steeler fans around here, but on the far right is Hines Ward. You might recognize him from Dancing with the Stars. He won that. And he's also a future Hall of Fame wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was one of my teammates. There were 4 of us that were going through this, and Hines has no fear of linebackers when he's going across the middle, but he's deathly afraid of sharks. And that's a true story. And I remember, before we get in the water for a swim, he'd be like, hey, E, You think there's any sharks out there? Yeah. I'm getting ready for the Ironman. I'm like, man, that's what you're thinking about? I'm thinking about the 140.6 miles that we're going to have to travel and then this next day, and you're worried about sharks. And I'm like, yeah, there's tons of sharks out there, right? But the way I see it, if I'm a shark and I'm doing my shark thing and I look up and I see me, I'm going to be like, oh, I probably already got to him. We're going to go get this guy over here, and go get that guy. And I don't know if that's legit or not, but I've been in the ocean a lot. I've never once been eaten by a shark. So I think there's something to it. I don't know. I'm not a shark. In the middle, it's Paula Newby-Fraser. Paula Newby-Fraser, she's an 8-time Ironman world champion. She was our coach. No one has done what she's done in the sport. They call her the Queen of Kona. Just amazing. And she looks really sweet in this picture. I'll just leave it there, all right? She was tough. She was hard. She great coach. She expected a lot from us. And what she preached day in and day out was that, day in and day out, consistency. From day one, like, I was a little bit intimidated by her. I'm like, Paula, I'm not a great swimmer. It's like, you don't have to be a great swimmer. You just have to be consistent. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not that fast of a runner. It's like, you don't have to be that fast of a runner. You just have to be consistent. And I was like, I might as well round it out. I'm not a very good biker. You don't have to. You have to be consistent. You have to do the work day in and day out. And she said, I'm going to make this pretty simple for you. I'm going to write your workouts. You just have to go do them. And she said, the most important workouts are the ones that you don't feel like doing. Those are the ones that matter. When you get out of bed and it's too cold to drive to the pool and get into the cold water, that's the one that matters. And you got to promise me that you're going to drive to the pool and get into the water and at least start that workout. And once you start a workout, you end up finishing it. But the consistency, day in and day out, is what matters. And what she would always say is, it's not what you do in a day. It's not what you do in a day. It's what you do daily. And that's, I began to live by that. And it makes sense with an Ironman. If you don't do the training every day, if you don't do it day in and day out, you're not going to cross that finish line. But that translates to every goal that we have, right? Think about that goal that you have, that goal that inspires you. You got to do the work day in and day out, especially on the days that you don't want to, if you want to reach that finish line, if you want to reach that goal, if you want to be successful. Consistent. A resilient person is consistent. One last story about Lupe. I am going to get back to that Ironman. I will, I promise. Lupe, okay, when I was injured, I was given a handicap placard, which makes sense, right? Missing a leg, like, they gave me a handicap placard. I was not ready to be handicapped. I threw that thing away, right? And then I must have complained for like the next 6 months, because I got another one in the mail 6 months later. My wife's like, hey, this came in the mail for you. I'm like, let me see that. Just put it in my glove box for a rainy day, And I was living in San Diego, and it never rains there. So I'm like, I started using it on sunny days. I'd pull into work, like, whew, that's a long walk. I think I'll be handicapped today, zip to the front and get in my spot. And I'd get out of my truck, and I'd limp a little bit, like, I got the leg thing going on. Guys, my prosthetic guy, he stinks, But I was with Lupe one day. We go to the grocery store, pull in to the parking lot. There's no parking anywhere. And I'm like, you know what, I'm not dealing with this today. And I zip to the front, and I pull into my handicapped spot, and I grab my placard, and I hang it up. I'm like, Lupe, let's go. I'm get out of the truck, start walking into the store, and she says, Dad, what was that magic blue ticket? I'm like, why do you ask so many questions? But I'll answer that. Because I only have one leg, because Daddy only has one leg, I'm allowed to park right there with that blue ticket. That's for people like me. And without missing a beat, she says, but Dad, you have 5 legs. You have a running leg, a biking leg, a water leg, a walking leg, and your left leg. I'm like, oh, little brat, right? I'm walking into the store like, I do have 5 legs. And I'm walking through the store, and I just can't help but feel guilty. I was not setting the example that I wanted to be setting for her. And I have nothing against handicap parking, nothing against it. But I just ran 6 miles prior to that trip to the store. I was training for an Ironman triathlon. Someone needed that spot more than me. I recognized that I was using my leg as an excuse when it was convenient for me, right? I was using my leg as an excuse, and it wasn't just with parking, it was with other things. I went to Disneyland a lot and just went right to the front of the line. Training. I'd go on a run with some buddies, and if I couldn't keep up, I'm like, hey, you guys keep going, we've got the leg thing going on. I was using my leg as an excuse, and it was holding me back from reaching my potential. And that day, walking through the store, I made a promise to myself that I would never use this stupid leg as an excuse again. Most freeing thing that I'd ever done. And I don't share that story with you because I'm extremely proud of it. I share that story with you because we're human and we use excuses. And I just challenge you, next time you're going to use an excuse to get out of something, ask yourself, what is this holding me back from reaching? And maybe you won't use it that time, and maybe you're going to grow and get a little bit better at reaching your potential. And that's what we're going for, trying to always learn, trying to always become a little bit better than we were before. All right, let's go back to Hawaii. Side of the road. I'm on the side of the road, sitting on the ground. I can't get my leg on because my limb is swollen. I'm out. Things are not going my way. I want to quit. But that decision, whether I was going to quit or not, that was already made. That was made years ago. Growing up, I was never allowed to quit anything. As a Marine, you can't quit, right? It was just built in me. It was a natural behavior. I knew I wasn't going to quit. I knew I was going to finish that race. I just didn't know how. And my question was not, am I going to finish the race? It's how am I going to finish this race? And when we're asking that question, how am I going to do this? How am I going to solve this problem? That's when we're dangerous. That's when we are in problem-solving mode, and that's when good things happen. How am I going to do this? I had to get this leg on, so I ended up elevating my limb, letting the swelling coming down. You know, I was even squeezing it a little bit. I put my liner on. I let my heart rate come down. I laid down for, it was another 7 or 8 minutes. People that were tracking my progress thought that like I died out there. I'm like, yeah, I was pretty close to it, all right? But after that, I ended up jamming my leg on. It didn't go all the way on, but it was enough for me to stand up and start walking. So I started walking. Every step, my limb was pushing a little further into that prosthetic leg. And at about 1/4 of a mile, my leg was on. It was uncomfortable a little bit, but it was bearable. I'm like, okay, my leg's on. And I have this sleeve that goes from my prosthetic that I pull up over top of my thigh because it helps keep your leg on. When you're running and your leg falls off, that's a bad day. So I pulled that thing up and I start jogging and the miles start dropping off, and the next thing I know, I'm on the last mile. And the streets are lined with people. They're all yelling. There's ringing cowbells. It was crazy. They're yelling my name. They're like, go Eric, go Eric. I'm like, I'm famous. I'm running. At the end of the race, I looked down and my bib said Eric on it. I'm like, oh, you know what? They probably didn't know. They were probably just reading that. It's all right. I needed it at that point in time. And I see the finish line and I take off. I ran that last mile faster than any mile that day. And I came busting across that finish line. It was 11 hours. 54 minutes. I can't even make that face. I can't put the emotions into words. It felt so good, and it definitely answered that question. Eric, how'd you get yourself into this? I got myself into this because I wanted a challenge. You know, I wanted that journey. Even though it was hard, I learned so much. I grew through it. And I'm just, man, I like this picture, but it's just me as an individual. You know, the Ironman, that's a team effort. So many people were part of my team and impacted my life and my story. It was amazing. It was really amazing. And I think it's cool when you hit that goal, when you reach some success, to celebrate it. And I did. But then what's next? How can we continue to grow? And I was like, oh, I think I can run a faster Ironman. I've done 8 of these stupid things. They're not stupid. I like them. And there's one amputee that still has a faster time, and I'm going to get him, number 9. If not 9, it'll be 10, all right? It'll be sweet when it does happen. I had this happen. This was pretty cool. 2021, I got to go represent Team USA at the Tokyo Paralympics in the sport of paratriathlon. And this is where it just came full circle to me. It was just an overwhelming experience. I had the privilege of representing our country in military uniform, and then I got to represent our country in an athletic uniform. And it was just, it was pretty neat. And to think that being on that world stage, you know, one of the biggest events in the world, all started with something that seemed negative, stepping on an IED and getting injured, and then making a decision to push forward, and then next thing you know, I was there. You know, I had that goal that inspired me, and we went there. I got a video crossing the finish line.
As we see McElvenny wrapping things up for the United States here. A strong run for him has moved him from 8th all the way up to 6th.
That's a great showing for Eric. Look at that. There's a smile.
Eric McElvenny's first Paralympic Games will net him a top 6 finish. Not bad for a guy who didn't punch his ticket to Tokyo until less than 2 months ago.
That's right. And we have a Naval Academy grad, former Marine. So here's a veteran crossing the line for us in the United States.
Great 5K for McElvenny to gain a couple of spots here and finish.
So what's so cool is my family couldn't go out and support and be there, and when I got back, it was televised, so my wife watched the race, and I got back, and she like gave me a hug and a kiss and said, hey, just a quick question, why were you running so slow at the end of that race? I was like, what? She said, I thought it was a sprint triathlon. Aren't you supposed to be sprinting? It didn't look like a sprint. And then the next thing she said made my day. She said, hey, good job on 6th place, but guess what? I already looked it up. 2024, the Olympics and Paralympics are in Paris, France, and I want to go to Paris. So tomorrow morning, you have a swim workout first thing, and then a bike workout, and then we're going to work on that run. I got to get that run back up there. I got to get a medal this time. So her goal and my goal together, you know, we support each other. We're going to try to qualify for the Paralympics, go compete in Paris, and keep moving forward. I want to close with this. I was asked a question once by a high school student. If I can go back to the day that I was injured, what would I change? And Q&A is awesome, but it's tough because like you have to give an answer there, and then you come up with a good answer when you're driving home, right? So I was like, well, I wouldn't step right there. Maybe I'll go around that. Like, around that. I don't know. And then I thought about it, and it's like, no, what would I change? And that's hard. Like, what would I change? I'll tell you, like, it was hard. It was a hard time for myself, physically, mentally, emotionally. It was a hard time for my family and friends. I mean, it was months of challenge. I wouldn't want to go through that again. I wouldn't. But I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it because I'll tell you what, I grew. I recognized what my priorities are. When I thought there was a moment I might be dying, 2 thoughts went through my head. I get to go to heaven, and I thought about my wife and my daughter. So for me, my faith and my family, those must be the 2 most important things in my life. Am I living according to those? I had to make some rudder steers to get on track, but what are your priorities? And lastly, what is something that you could change in your life, right? What you can implement into your life where you can just become, 2 to 5% better. So next year at this time, when you're at this meeting, that you have grown professionally, you've grown some relationships, you've grown stronger, you've grown more resilient. What's something that you can implement right now? All right, starting tomorrow. We'll start tomorrow, all right? But I'll tell you what, thank you so much for allowing me to be part of your day. Thanks for laughing at some of my jokes. Have a wonderful rest of the day. And get out there and crush it. Get out there and crush it. Set some goals and keep pushing until you reach them. Thank you.